The Hennessy Report from Keystone Partners, a free-flowing conversation with leaders in the HR community, talking about themselves, the industry, and their work. Brought to you in cooperation with NERA, the Northeast Human Resources Association.
Welcome to the Hennessy Report by Career Minds. Now that Keystone is combined with Career Minds, I'm your host, Dave Hennessy, and today's guest is the Chief People Officer at Toast, Mike Gutner. Mike, like a lot of our recent guests, did not start in the HR function. Actually, even when he joined Toast, he was a leader in their operations within the restaurant division. In fact, he updates us on what's gone on at Toast and how they've evolved geographically and the businesses that they serve and how they're serving them. The company has developed specialized business units to better serve their customers. He discusses that, how they've transformed HR to a strategic business unit, how belonging is an important factor in retention at Toast. Of course, every guest we're talking about AI, and Mike talks about how that is enhancing HR processes to improve efficiency and the importance of understanding the restaurant industry for effective leadership there. And really, he talks about how they're future-proofing their organization, an interesting concept that he shares with us, and many other topics. Also, at the end, we have our Coach's Corner segment, and this month we have Amy Twiggs, who's going to talk about building trust with teams. And now, our conversation with Mike Gutner. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dave. Excited to be here.
I'm so glad my colleague here at Keystone, Omar Saldana, has introduced us, and he's joining us for this discussion. Welcome, Omar, too, to the Hennessy Report again.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Omar, you and I go back several years.
Yes.
You know, Dave, I know about 5 years ago, you had my predecessor, Annie Draper, on the podcast. And Omar, I think you and I connected through Annie.
Yes.
And you've provided a lot of great support to Toasters who are moving on outside of Toast. And so it's great to see you back here too.
Yeah. And we love to partner with companies like Toast, and you're about to tell us a story.
That's it.
But before that, just like Annie did, what's an early life moment, Mike, as you look back on it now? It was an inflection point for who you've become in your career.
Yeah. So, you know what? I'm gonna tell you a little story about about growing up, and actually about my mom. So, in 2000, I lost my mom to breast cancer, and in the years preceding that, my brother, sister, and I were sort of some of her primary caretakers. And if you were to ask me, if I'll go back even further, if you were to ask me, pretend I'm 5 years old for a second, Mike, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would tell you I want to be an astronaut. And like many kids, that might be true. Mine stuck. And so through the years of high school and college, I actually went to college. I studied astrophysics in college. And that's sort of what I wanted to do, or at least I had my brain set on, studying science. It's what I want to do with my life, and eventually, go to space and walk on the moon. And then after my mom passed, things changed a little bit. And what I started to realize, to me at least, was that I was sort of pulled by a different gravity that was a bit more focused on the pieces of me that wanted to help people. And I think my mom, part of this is probably nature and part of it's nurture. My mom was a very empathetic person, and I think I learned a lot from her. She spent a lot of the years of her life as a nurse, and then working with nonprofits all over New England where I live. And so I think the perspective that I gained from the passing of my mom and then the years that followed was, how do I invest myself more in the things that bring people together and that connect people, and that really, I think it gave me a lot of perspective on what really matters. And so, I know we'll talk about it, but even fast forward to now, I get to spend every day working on things that connect people and that, that I think really matter to ensuring their success in work and in life.
That's great. Well, let's talk about Toast now. When we had Annie on, it was early pandemic, and you and Toast were busy saving the restaurant industry, and you had a big impact. I think everybody remembers, if they didn't know about Toast, we all learned about it during that period of time, for sure. And but the organization has changed a lot. I'm sure. I know that, and I'm sure you could fill us in even more. Could you update us on what's changed with Toast, the scale, the focus? I know you still have a passion about the restaurant industry, but fill us in some of the blanks over the last 5 years.
So, first of all, yeah, that 5 years ago, I think probably when you spoke with Annie, so we were just coming out of, as early 2020 was a hard time for many organizations, and they, whether it was changes to company strategy. Some companies had to shut down. Many had to do layoffs. It was a hard time for many, I know, Toast included. And so, I think probably at that point, Toast might have been about 2,000 people, maybe a little less when you spoke with Annie. And we were really focused on, the core bread and butter customer for Toast is, our restaurants on main streets and communities all over the country. Over the course of the last 5 years, now Toast is almost 7,000 employees as you and I speak. We are in United Kingdom, we're in Ireland, we're in India, we're in Taiwan, we're in Poland, we're in Canada, whereas back then we were only in the US really. We've got customers all over the world. And so there's a very natural, as we've grown and scaled, we've had to build a really important sort of multi-geographic muscle to who we are, to hiring, to customer base, to strategy, to operations and beyond. What's also really amazing is even if we were to sit down a year or two ago, I would say we know that there are many restaurants out there that also think and think about sort of a grocery store element. We call it retail inside Toast. And, whether you're a brewery selling merchandise like hoodies and hats, or you're a small market with a restaurant attached, that we know that there's opportunity for Toast to be able to expand even further inside that, inside the restaurant, inside that market in order to provide more value. And so even over the last year and a half, we've built this awesome retail sort of business unit for ourselves. We signed Applebee's last year. We signed Topgolf. I was actually in Topgolf. I took the kids to Topgolf on Saturday, and they were walking around with Toast handhelds, which is just awesome. And so now between international and retail and now these enterprise level brands, what we started to do is build these business units inside Toast. Whereas before, our sales leader was running all sales and our marketing leader was running all marketing, regardless of the customer. Now we've got these sort of mini CEOs. We call them COOs of a business unit, like COO of retail, COO of international, et cetera. And their job is to run the full team, marketing, sales, customer support, product for that customer base. And so if I go back to our mission and our vision as a company, our mission is to help restaurants thrive, period. And so if we can put decision
Topgolf
making,
sells food, right?
What'd you say?
Topgolf sells food.
They sell, well, first, the food is amazing. The experience is amazing.
Right.
But if we can put decision making and put those teams so close to that customer, then we believe that we're seeing our mission and our vision through. But also, that's one of the ways in which we've really pivoted the company and grown over the course of the last 5 years is an incredible expansion in the customer base, but also a differentiation that requires us to think differently about how we organize ourselves.
Wow. I think that would be surprising to a lot of people that Toast has expanded that much. I imagine this presents a lot of opportunities and challenges as you think about talent and how you're going to make sure the workforce is ready for these new business units. Can you share a little bit about how this is changing your focus in the HR part of the business or the people side to drive this success?
So I joined the company 8 years ago, and back then, we had 400 to 500 employees. We had a few thousand customers, and, we were private then. And so all of the funding that we were getting, really, we were putting to the go-to-market engine. How do we make sure that we achieve product market fit with customers all over the US? and to the R&D engine to make sure we're building what they need. So a lot of the internal functions, like the people team, it wasn't really invested. We obviously need to build a recruiting engine that was awesome to get the talent in, but beyond that, we weren't really investing that much. And so when Annie joined, and then I joined Annie's team, because before Annie's team, I was in the business. I spent most of my career in the business, and anyway, and so given that
You're new to the HR function, right?
I'm relatively new. It's really over the course of the last 6-7 years, and so a lot of the things we've done is to really build an incredible HR function, and that is, we hired Jeff Moore, who's our VP of Talent Acquisition, who came from Google, who led all R&D hiring at Google, and he's just built a lights out hiring engine, which is deeply operational, and he runs it almost like he's a sales leader and like it's a sales team, because I do think of it that way. That's one. Two is we brought in Alice Chung, who's our head of total rewards. She's come from PayPal and ServiceNow with a ton of experience in building it for scale for very complex organizations. She's bringing AI into the total reward space, which is awesome. How do we give people insight into, what's going on in total rewards for themselves in real time, and understanding, what's going on out in the industry and what's new and innovative that we're trying to pull in. So we've got some super cool things we're planning there. If I can go down the line, and we've just brought in so many great leaders. And at the same time, a lot of the things that we're focused on are future-proofing our leadership organization.
What do you mean by future-proofing?
Yeah, Toast is 7,000 people right now. As I mentioned, we're in multiple countries. We're going to hopefully get into more. That's the plan. And so, a lot of the things I think about are, how do we get, once we identify an amazing leader to bring into the organization, how do we make sure that they're off to the super strong start? So a lot of this is, let's get them out in the field. Let's get them in the restaurant. Let's get them working in the restaurant. Let's get them working with our customers every day. And so they can see and feel what it's like to run a restaurant. If you've never been in the restaurant industry before, it's chaotic. You got super thin profit margins. And so a lot of what we do at Toast is like every day, every support interaction, it matters so much to the success of that customer. So if we can get leaders to understand what it feels like, what it's like to have a busy lunch rush, and all of a sudden the tickets stop firing from the register back to the kitchen, what does that feel like? And we bring that same thing, we bring it into the people organization. So the way I think about people is, we're a business unit too. Our number one value at Toast, we're all in customer success. Doesn't matter what role you're in. When I go out to visit our teams in London and Dublin and Toronto and cities all over the US, I'm going with sales on ride-alongs. I'm meeting with customers. Now, I'm the chief people officer. And so, but I so believe in, it doesn't matter what role you play, we all have the same job here to make customers thrive. You got to understand what that customer is. And our people team, all hands, we bring back those stories. We bring in leaders from the business of what's happening in the customer front to make sure we're bringing customers front and center to what we do. That means that we have to think customer first. Sometimes our customers are internal. It's, how do we make sure that customer support rep has everything they need in order to be successful from an enablement and management perspective? How do we make sure that finance business partner, has what they need for benefits and beyond? And so we're doing a lot to look at my team and my metrics for success, my KPIs, cost per employee, cost per visit to our offices. Can we get more efficient at handling inquiries from our toasters so that they can get what they need as quickly as possible? I mentioned AI and total reward. So I think about making sure that the whole people team is focused on how do we deliver the best product to our customers, that's internal toasters, so that they can deliver the best product they can to external customers.
Great. Mike, I was going to ask you a question. You kind of answered it as I was thinking of the question about the cultural change. Because I remember when we first talked to Andy, she was talking a lot about how historically the company hired a lot of people who worked inside restaurants. And then you started talking about bringing people from all these other industries. But what you've done is put them in restaurants and get them closer to the customer so they get that feeling of what the challenges are. to be in that industry?
Just last night, I took about 10 top performers from across the company and a few customers to the Bruins game. And, it was an opportunity for us to, thank our amazing toasters, but also reward for great performance. And I was sitting with a sales rep. He used to run one of the biggest restaurant groups in Boston. He's now a sales rep at Toast. I was sitting with an account manager who her first job was actually to install Toast at one of Toast's first customers like 9 years ago. And so that, the roughly 60 to 65% of toasters worked in the restaurant industry. Many of them worked in restaurants that use Toast, and they said, "Oh my God, this is amazing. I want to go work at Toast." So that's still true.
Still true.
We also, in order to, as we've grown from a private into a public company, as we've come from a couple hundred employees to several thousand, as we've gone from US only to multinational, we also are bringing in leaders who have seen the scale before, who understand what it's like to grow up and grow fast, to be a global organization, a multi-billion-dollar global organization. And so that's where the folks like Jeff and Alice and so many other leaders at Toast, where they bring that expertise too. So one of the things that Aman and I talk so much about is we need to have that growth from inside the org. Love the fact that our promotion rates are strong, that we continue to bring folks, up through the organization, and we love to see that mobility inside. 1 out of every 4 jobs is filled internally at Toast, which is awesome. But then it's also really important you bring in people who have seen something bigger than Toast that can help us look around the corner and see what's going to come up next. And so I think both of those things are really important to help us scale.
You've talked about the leadership team and mentioned some of them by name. You're a first-time chief people officer, and you have a first-time CEO, and you're bringing in talent from other places in the world. Tell us what it's like to be in this seat for the first time with a CEO in the seat for the first time.
Well, first of all, so, as you mentioned, I've spent most of my career in the business. So, I started out at Google in early 2004 as a customer support rep. And, I spent time running sales teams. I've done some product work. I've run supply chain. I was at Google for 10 years. And then I was at a small startup in Boston, running retail sales and marketing and customer success and people. Same thing before I came to Toast.
Great experience to come into Toast for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I think one, it's through sort of the experience that I was talking to you about a little bit about going through with my mom and what that taught me about life and what really matters. 2, in my first years at Google, I had the great fortune to work for so many amazing people leaders. This was sort of as Sheryl Sandberg had built this amazing organization inside Google of these incredible people leaders. And I think about Kim Scott, who ended up writing Radical Candor. And
Had her on this podcast.
Yeah, it's awesome. Russ Laraway, who ended up being the chief people officer at Qualtrics. He was one of my mentors. And so I learned so much about what great people leadership meant from them. And so I think that I, through nature and nurture, have sort of always felt the gravity to do this work. And so when I got to Toast, I was running our account management team, and our founders came to me and they said, "Hey, you should think about, maybe coming over to the people team. You'd be interested in being our chief people officer." And at the time, I was sort of building bonus structures, performance management structures, upward feedback surveys for my own team, and then we'd incubate them across the organization. Remember, I was sort of saying that at the time, the HR team wasn't really invested in that much. This is many years ago. And I said, I'm not who you're looking for. I've never done this before. You need somebody who can come in and take you public and build your board. And they're like, "All right, we'll interview for it anyway." And I thought, okay, sure, I'll interview for it. Anyway, we found Annie mid-interview as I was interviewing, and Chris Comparato, the former CEO, came to me and he said, "Hey, I know this is weird, but can you interview Annie for me? Because I think we might have found her." And I said, "Well, of course." So I met Annie, and she said, "Will you do this with me?" And I eventually said yes. I got to learn so much from her. And so when Aman stepped into his role, and as Annie stepped down, and as, Aman asked me to step into this one, First of all, I have felt like one of the things that I've spent a lot of time doing is understanding the Toast business, our customers, the leadership team. And Aman and I have been, have grown close over the years in that sort of context too. And so for me, a lot of it is, okay, I know the customers, I know the team. Now, I don't think I have, I stepped into the boardroom really for the first time as a first-time CPO. And I had very frank conversation with Mark Hawkins, the chair, with Susan Chapman Hughes, who's the chair of our comp committee, around, they know what I am. They know what they're getting and what they're not. And so what's been really great is this one, they hold me to a high bar of delivery, as they should. Two, I'm spending a lot of time in learning. I am an experiential learner too. That's just how I learn best. We all learn differently. That's me. So I am screwing up sometimes, just like we all do. I mean, I remember I was on PTO in Norway with my family as we were trying to hire our chief operating officer, and it's 4 a.m. and I'm on the phone with Susan and Aman, and the offer structure that I had put together wasn't working. And Susan's like, what are you doing? And Aman's like, come on, man. And so like some of it is just learning the hard way. By the way, we have an amazing CEO. We ended up hiring him. His name's Pete Sarborn. He's amazing. But like some of it's the hard way, but some of it is also I spent a lot of time listening to my team, building my cabinet of other chief people officers outside Toast who have done awesome things. I spend time with Annie. I spend time with many leaders. For those chief people officers out there, we all had our first time being a chief people officer. And so Aman and I have an opportunity to build something together, and I'm doing a lot of coaching to him. He's doing a lot of coaching to me, and we're figuring it out.
I know from talking with Omar, actually, that belonging is really important to you and Toast. And you mentioned AI, and I know something that's on a lot of CPOs' minds is that human connection piece. And remote work, and I know that's a challenge for everybody still today. And how do you foster it now at Toast? I'm sure people would love to hear how you're fostering human connection and belonging.
Yeah. We do an annual engagement survey, as I know many organizations do, or they do it more regularly. The number one indicator for us, for Toasters, as to whether or not they're going to engage with their work every day and they're going to be successful at Toast, they're going to stay, and we're going to retain them, is belonging. The questions about belonging for us are the number one thing. Do I feel like I can see myself here? Can I be myself here? And so we spend a lot of time on my team and then across the leadership team talking about it and thinking about it. In fact, just last week, the executive team gathered in Orlando, Florida. We had our sales kickoff, and we were there for that. We had a 2-day offsite for the executive team. And the first exercise we did was really effectively, how do you define your own belonging? Now, these are the most senior levels of people in the organization. And so we each picked values. And so one is we know that matters so deeply to everyone showing up and being able to thrive here. We try to model that behavior at the executive level and then on down. And so a lot of that then comes into, okay, what are some of the things that really drive belonging? Now, belonging to everyone is relatively individual, but we know that human connection is one of the greatest levers we have to increase belonging. How do we drive human connection, especially in this world where we're growing so fast? We're in many, many countries. We're, the hybrid sort of work environment, the office, remote, working at home. How does that play in? So what we're trying to do is build a really flexible hybrid work program in which, if you're near an office, philosophically, we just want to see you in the office minimum 2 days a week. It's not something we're mandating right now.
It's a request. Yeah.
It's sort of an expectation of how we all show up together.
Yeah.
We're trying to build our office spaces in a way that really drive that belonging and that human connection. And we spend a lot of time. I'm the executive sponsor of we call it Multigrain, which is the LGBTQIA community. By the way, we never waste an opportunity for a good bread pun.
Good what?
A good bread pun. So I have 3 kids. They're called croutons. If I gotta have a dog, that's a biscuit. And many of our employee resource groups and communities, so they're bread puns. So multi-grain anyway is LGBTQ, and I'm the exec sponsor of that. And that's something I'm really passionate about, is being able to make sure that we have these communities and these spaces for individuals to come and see themselves in, and where they can see others and talk about things that really matter to them, that they're passionate about. And we get a lot of the leadership team. We got a lot of folks involved. Anyway, I believe that so deeply in the concept of belonging. We try to bring that to life as much as we can in everything we do.
That's great. All right, Omar.
Wow,
I'm
I'm so
sure.
this is wonderful, Mike. Just love hearing it. There's so much there, evolving and scaling, running recruiting like a sales team. I love your idea of experimenting, learning, listening, and I love we're all in customer success. There's just so much, right? And my question is, what's the most important goal you want to achieve around people and talent at Toast this year? And how will you achieve it? I'm so curious.
For me this year, there's a couple of things that are really important. One, if I go back again years ago, as we sort of, the people team is a team we've been investing in sort of year over year as much as we can in order to make it a strategic business unit for the organization. And I feel really happy the work that Annie did and that I've been able to do over the course of the last couple of years to bring that to life. One is, back then, when you spoke with Annie 5 years ago, if an employee had a question, they would reach out. Maybe it's about their benefits or about leave or about if there was a holiday coming up. They'd reach out to anyone that they knew, and it was entirely unscalable. And so what we've done is, both through an intranet that we've built, but also we're bringing in an AI chatbot. We've built an operations team, sort of like, we call it, it's effectively like take a customer support team, but make it internal, where we now have effectively, it's like a people support team, where if you have a question, you go to the AI chatbot. If the AI chatbot can't answer it, it goes to a person. That person can then answer it. If they can't answer it, they'll route you to a specialist on the benefits team, whatever that might be. So we're really trying to take this concept of customer focus and customer centricity and make it real for us. So that's one way. That's something that we're going to continue to do a lot of sort of building out the operations team and building out that AI experience. That's one. Two is, we're using AI to build a dynamic total rewards tool, an offer generation tool, which it's going to reduce our time to hire, therefore our cost per hire. We're going to be able to get more efficient on hiring awesome talent. And we're going to allow Toasters the opportunity to really engage with total rewards in a way that they never have before. It's not just about your base. It's not just about your bonus. It's about all the perks, all the benefits that come with being a Toaster, and being able to see that in real time and really get access to all that data. So we're using AI and technology and in a way that I'm really excited about. Actually, this is one fun fact. So we did a people team hackathon last year and for AI, and in our engagement survey, the number one organization inside Toast that was using AI the most was engineering. Not surprising. And I love that. The second is the people team, out of all the teams inside Toast. So I'm particularly proud of that. And I love the fact that my team is using AI so much to do their jobs better and to sort of to do it smarter. The second thing I would say, Omar, is in the context of future-proofing the leadership team, one is we're building a multi-year global workforce plan, which will allow us to say, okay, over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, who are we going to be? What do we not have right now in terms of talent? What do we have right now that can grow into that leadership? What are the leadership gaps that we have? New teams, new roles, new business units that we don't have yet or that need to grow. And we're going to start to build sort of multi-year executive talent pipelines, which is we now have a set of folks based on what we know that we mapped the market that we want to be able to tap into down the line in the coming months and years. That then ties into our space, real estate, as we drive more sort of human connection in our physical spaces. We also want to make sure that seats are used. Otherwise, maybe we need to think about space differently. And so I'm really excited this year for the continued improvement in technology for how we do things inside Toast. I'm excited for our sort of more proactive approach to workforce planning versus just reactive. And then I'm really excited about the ways in which we're going to be able to scale out my team to answer questions easier and faster for Toasters.
And Mike, I just want to say that as I was listening, I was thinking that you're using technology and other things to make those important questions, benefits, comp, etc., to answer them and then to be able to focus. It's like, oh, that was easy. Now I can focus on my job as opposed to, oh, these other things are getting in the way, which, some of us in our careers have experience, but it's like, just do great work.
Totally. Well, and there's so much we don't get to, right? There's so much, if look, I want to make sure every toaster can have their questions answered. But each one of those questions doesn't require somebody on the other end of the line to answer it, right? Like so many of those questions can be answered through whether it's a document or, maybe you've used an AI chat feature with another company or whatever. So that if we can do that well, then so many other things that we haven't been able to get to yet, benefits we want to explore, new compensation strategies we haven't thought about yet or we want to explore, new places we want to get into, new offices we want to open, new customers we want to tap into. We can finally start doing that work. So it's not about using AI to replace the team we have. It's actually allowing them to then focus on things that we just haven't gotten to yet or that require really deep thought and strategy to do it.
Well, this is really exciting, Mike. You got so many good things cooking at Toast, and now we have some questions about you that we want to wrap up the podcast with.
Of course.
If you could go and write a letter of professional career advice to your 25 or 30-year-old self, dear Mike, what would you write to yourself?
I think I'd say, dear Mike, just chill out a little bit. I mean, look, I go back to those early years of my career and, I certainly had an impatience, to get somewhere faster. And I think I was still figuring out what that somewhere was. In many ways, I think I've recently just found what I want to do when I grow up, right? I love what I do every day now as a chief people officer, and I love this work. It just took me 20 something years to figure that out. And so
all those experiences are making you a better chief
well,
people officer.
and I agree. And I would say this, I say the same thing. I talk to many folks who are earlier in their career now, who are just coming out of college and trying to step into the workforce. And I remember hearing this from mentors or from folks who were much more experienced than I was way back then, 20 something years ago. And a lot of their advice was similar to the advice I give myself, which is, let the play develop. Focus on the learning. Learn as much as you can. I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things that drives me is I love a great adventure. I always have. I think of what I'm doing now is another sort of great adventure. I would tell myself to have as many adventures as I could and learn as much as I could and chill out a little bit.
Well, on that note, the soundtrack of your life, if somebody could sing it, who would it be?
That would be Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. And I say that because when I was 7, I saved up my allowance to buy the Born in the USA cassette tape. It was the first thing I bought with my own money, or rather the money that was allowed to me through my parents, right, from allowance. And so I've followed him. I've been to several of his concerts. I went to his Broadway show, and Bruce Springsteen would sing that. By the way, great. David, if you want to get Bruce on this podcast, that's great. And if you can share that with him, then that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. I'll invite him. I don't know that he'll say yes. And last question, something interesting about you that you haven't already shared. that we wouldn't find on your LinkedIn or your bio? Something else that's interesting about you that you're willing to share with our audience?
Yeah, of course. So I mentioned early in the podcast about the passing of my mother. And right after that, I chose to do something, like many kids, I rode a bike a lot, but I'd never really, really ridden a bike with any, serious sort of any real distance. I signed up um, to lead a bicycle trip across the United States, and I was graduating from Yale, and um, it was to raise money for Habitat for Humanity, and and so I did, and so there were 30 college kids, and I led the trip from New Haven, Connecticut, all the way to San Francisco, and we dipped our tires in the Atlantic in Connecticut, and we dipped our tires in the Pacific, in San Francisco. That was we biked 4,000 miles over 9 weeks, and that was the first time I had really served as a leader in any sort of real capacity, and experience taught me a lot about great leadership, I think, and I learned like many of us do in early and sort of leadership experiences, what really matters, what great leadership looks like. And I learned from many others, who have led great teams since then. But that was my first experience. Lead from the front, make sure everybody, has the experience that they need to have in order to make themselves, reach their potential and thrive. And so you won't find that on my LinkedIn or on my resume, but I think that was an early experience that shaped me. And by the way, I was in the best shape of my life after that. I mean, it's hard to get back to that. I'll tell you.
We could probably do a podcast just on that whole
I'm happy to.
incident.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
My God. I mean, how many bike problems and physical problems and getting food and nourishment along the way? I can't imagine the stuff that you all made it across too. You all made it.
We all made it. And one thing it taught me was hydration. God, that matters, because in the middle of Nevada in August, where it's 100 miles between towns, the one thing that matters is a full water bottle, I tell you.
Right.
And I learned that
think about that around Boston.
Yeah, exactly. I learned that the hard way. That's for the next podcast. It's fine.
Mike, it was so great having you. Omar, thank you for joining. This is fun. Fun to have Toast on the Hennessy Report again.
I'm excited to be here, and thank you so much for doing this. It's been a great pleasure.
Well, Amy Twiggs, it's great to have you on the Hennessy Report for our Coach's Corner segment. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Dave. I've always wanted to do this, and I finally got asked.
Well, it's great working with you over the last few years. And one of the things you're known for, of course, you're a consultant and a coach, a leadership development coach, and also you're a facilitator for our Accelerator Management and Leadership Development Program. And we want to talk about something that you do in those accelerator programs. In fact, the Leading Through Change module that we talked about before. And I'd love for you to just offer some tips, some things that kind of come to mind when you're coaching people through and helping them be better leaders through change. What are some of the things that come to mind that people struggle with that you can coach them on and give advice to our audience on?
Okay. Interesting you bring up change, just because I think that probably every single listener right now is probably going through some kind of change. It's a big deal right now, right? I mean, it has been, will be, or is involved in some kind of major change. And I think it's one of those things that everybody wants to get a little more competency in, and is managing change well. I guess one of the things, so in Leading Through Change, which is one of our accelerator learning paths that we offer, one of the things that we really talk about in there is, how change is not linear. And I think that's probably one of the most important things for people to understand, is that change doesn't just start here and we go zip along that line and then it ends here and then it's over, right? Change is, I would call change like a swirl. It's some people move through change really fast. Some people move through change really slow. A lot of people move through change and we think, oh, they've got it. They're really accepting this change, and then they kind of fall back and they struggle with it again, and you have to pull them forward again. So the big thing that I try to talk about with people is A, the change isn't linear. B, that everybody reacts to change differently, and you have to meet those people where they are in their acceptance of change. So you as a leader have to adjust how you handle somebody in a moment of change, because again, there's what we call the laggards. Those are the people that take forever to get on board. There's the early adopters. Those are the people that are out there, like, flying the banners like change is coming, and then the majority of people are kind of in the middle, and those middle ground people tend to be the ones that may sort of go forward and then fall back again and then feel good and then not feel so good. And so, but each of them, you have to recognize where they are in their acceptance of change, and you as the leader have to meet them where they are. And in order, tell me if I'm rambling, Dave, but I just want to say, I think in order to meet people where they are in change, one of the things you have to have done first is built a great foundation of trust. And building great teams and helping lead teams through times of change, I think the people that have built those teams of trust are able to do it better, because they have taken the time to get to know the people on their team. They've taken the time to get to know that, so-and-so really likes baking sourdough, and then so-and-so really likes playing pickleball, and this person that maybe has a mom that's going through a sickness right now and needs a little extra compassion. And, everybody's got something. We all have a story, right? Nobody's just sitting there at a desk.
It's the personal component is a big part of developing trust.
Huge.
Yeah.
So I think I would say, hopefully you've already built your foundation of trust with your team, but if you haven't, you better get on it, because once you get that going, I think leading people through change is better and easier for you, because you know how to read the people. You know who's going to need more from you and who's going to need, who doesn't need so much, who can maybe be your, the person who's shouting out the change to everybody, demonstrating why the change is good. So I think that's important.
Amy, is there an example that comes to mind where you're coaching somebody that was having difficulty with leading change and how you helped them through it?
That's a good, yeah. Okay. I had a woman who was in one of my accelerator cohorts and in the leading through change cycle. Ironically, she had done the emotional intelligence learning path. So we've been through that. And she, as we're talking about change, and her company was going through layoffs literally as they were taking this course. So there was definitely change. And she was saying to me, she said, I'm a D in the disc is what she said. And I am focused on the goal, and I just want to move to the goal and get there and be done with all this change. And she said a bunch of people on my team, though, are like really struggling and they need to talk about it. And I know from our EQ course that I need to lean into that, but I'm just struggling because I want to move us towards the goal. And, I heard that and I listened and I said, what if getting to the goal was about showing the empathy they need? And she was like, whoa, light bulb moment. Oh, you're saying if I'm empathetic and I take the time to sit and listen and hear what they're feeling, that I might be able to get them on board faster to this change? And I was like, bingo. Try it. Try it and see.
So you connected her directive, get to the goal, with what needs to be done, which is an emotional thing. Right.
Exactly. And it was not a natural course for her, because as we learned through EQ in the prior sessions, she was like, I have a hard time with that because I don't want to, she didn't want to open her heart up that much. It was hard for her. She said, I do better when I just keep closed off and keep in a path. But later I learned, and she came back to me, a little while later and said, yeah, that was a ticket, because they needed that from me, and they needed to feel the trust that I have in them. They needed me to hear how they felt. They needed to cry a little bit, and they needed to just sit with it. And then they were able to move forward. And
That's
I
great.
think that's true of a lot of us. Sometimes you just need to be heard, and then you can move forward.
Yeah. That's great. Are there any other tips about managing change that you have for our audience who, like you said, I think a lot of people in human resources, which is most of our audience, are dealing with a tremendous amount of change, and it just seems like it's accelerating. Anything else that comes to mind, Amy?
No, not particularly. I just think I want to emphasize that change is, because it's difficult, you have to deliver the message in a lot of different ways. That, if I tell you, Dave, about a change that's coming, you're probably going to jump on board and get pretty excited, because that's how you are. That's how Dave rolls. But I also know I might tell Susie about the change, and she's going to be like, no, I don't feel good about this. This is scary. I know then I'm going to maybe give Dave an assignment that's going to let him sort of go and, propel the change forward. Susie, I'm not. I'm going to let her sit where she is, but I'm going to keep checking in with her, and I'm going to talk to her about it in different ways. And maybe she needs to see some data about why this change is going to work. And maybe she needs to understand more of the why behind it, and maybe I got somebody else on my team who has different needs. I think that's what's most important, is just recognizing people are different, and we react to change differently, and we need different things, and it's on us as the leaders to recognize how we need to adjust and how we need to deliver the messages.
That's great. Great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, great advice, Amy, and it's so great having you on our Coach's Corner segment. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Dave. I'm sorry I didn't let you talk.
No, it's all about having the coaching talent. We want to showcase you. So,
all right.
Thank you. Thank you for being
Dave.
here.
That was fun.
Thank you for listening to the Hennessy Report from Keystone Partners. Be sure to subscribe to listen to all of our conversations with leaders in HR. Go to KeystonePartners.com and click on the podcast button.